Rearview Eddie. Ever had a friend as was too slow? I know I have, and it can be mighty frustrating. But 'fore you think you got it bad, let me tell you, it could be worse. You could have the problem my cousin Dan had. Let me tell you about it. My cousin Dan had a friend by the name of Rearview Eddie. He was called this, on account of all you were like to see of him was his back. He was so fast, he'd catch your own breath for you. When he took it in his head to go somewhere, he'd get there before he left. Had to go back a different way, or he'd meet hisself coming. He was so fast, he raced sunbeams for fun. And that was the trouble. You see, old Eddie, he was too fast. Dan and him would go hunting, and he'd catch his limit, for Dan got out his gun. They'd go fishing, and Eddie'd have a full bucket for Dan baited his hook. If they went on a trip, Eddie would get back, before Dan grabbed his toothbrush and spare britches. It got so that Dan couldn't hardly do anything with Eddie. This didn't suit either of them, so they figured on slowing Eddie down somehow. First thing, they tried glue. Sure enough, it stuck Eddie to the ground. Trouble was, the ground wasn't stuck to nothing, so Eddie just walked kind of funny with sod on his feet. Next, they tried loading Eddie down with stones, but Eddie kept dropping 'em, and at his speed, it were like a cannonball blast. After that, they tried putting a lead boot on him. It worked for a bit, but at the next barn dance, it shook loose and concussed poor Dudley Marner. It were beginning to look like nothing was gonna work. But Dan wasn't the sort to give up easy, and he decided to try one more time. So, he sat down and had himself a think. While he was thinking, some kids came out of the schoolyard, jawing as how school was too slow, and how it seemed to take forever. Well, that's when Dan got hisself an idea. See, time's like water. It flows everywhere, and in some places, it soaks in. Schools are one of them places. So are doctors' waiting rooms and the government offices. That's why it seems to take so long when you're in there, on account of all the extra time. He marched over to the schoolhouse and knocked on the roof lightly, being a polite fella. Miss Malley, the schoolmarm, asked him what he wanted, in such a tone that made even Dan feel small. Dan explained that he needed to slow his friend up. He asked if he might take some of the school's time and give it to Eddie. Well, it seems school passes as slow for teachers as it did for students. And she was right willing to donate. So Dan, he gets himself a ladle, and dips up some of the time that had got stuck in the schoolhouse. He put it into a green bottle, stoppered it, and gave it to Eddie. Eddie drank up some of the time, and sure enough, he started to slow down right off. And ever after, whenever he started getting too fast, he'd get some time from the classroom, before it could pile up too much, and make school too long. And that's why kids in Deadwood Valley are the happiest in the world. And if that ain't every word of it truth, may storm along blow me down. This content is Creative Commons. Relevant attribution can be found in the description. Consider tapping the thumbs up and pressing the subscribe button if you enjoyed this video.